My name is Geoffrey Lewis Haskins, and my childhood was that of a comfortably off, well looked after child of a North London suburb. I was inspired at a very early age. Boys of my age at that time, as they grew up just after the First World War, were inspired to a life of travel and adventure. That was what all the literature was about. We read. The authors, everything was pointing towards culling the huge number of young boys that were needed for Britain's enormous merchant navy and large navy. And we were sort of fodder for that and eagerly followed that. So yes, I knew from a very early age that I wanted to go to sea. I ended up in the Navy on a temporary basis as a midshipman after I finished in the training ship. I was doing exactly what I wanted to do, what I planned to do. I had begun my life of adventure and travel. I was in the right place at the time. I was having completed my training at the Royal Naval College, Greenwich, where we were taught to eat properly with a knife and fork and behave ourselves. Having, I may say, been on arrival at Greenwich, we were issued with our call-up papers for the mines. We would be dry if we misbehaved ourselves, if we didn't meet up with the standards in any way. We were down the mines, Bivin boys. Okay, so that was the threat. It actually happened to two of them. There we are. So we had to learn quite a lot and get familiar with that. So at the end of that time, we were all sent down to Chatham to do a gunnery course, which prepared us to be ready to go to sea. And we were sent home to await an appointment. When it came, I was appointed to HMS Emerald. And that was the beginning of my association with the Emerald, which lasted for many, many years, but began with getting ready for what was called in those days the Second Front. To know where it was, but there would be an invasion of France, and we would be involved. So I arrived on board the Emerald, having been instructed to join her in Scotland at Greenock, and I arrived on board and my life in the Emerald began. But it lasted until after D-Day. But there we are. That's how it began. So my involvement with D-Day began with being sent over to collect this package from the Belfast. And I can remember climbing up the ladder there, being given the package, all sealed and addressed to the commanding officer of the Emerald. And I got back, handed in. I never knew what was in that package. I could only surmise that it was our orders for the invasion. Now there I was, being taught how to communicate, all the codes and whatever. And we got proficient, and then it was deemed that at a certain date we would sail, and we didn't know where we were going to sail. Could have been Timbuktu, but had a good idea. Well, this is a story I've often told. After we opened the bombardment eventually, we were delayed, of course, by the storms in the channel, but eventually we crossed over with the other 5 cruisers, I think, which had been selected to be the bombardment cruisers, most of them old, because we were expendable. They weren't going to risk nice, comfortable new one. And the Belfast was expendable at that stage because she had broken her back. That is, plates in her bottom. Eventually, we sailed down inline and deployed to our bombardment stations, which we then knew where to go. And on the appointed time, at 6 or 6:30, we opened fire on our selected targets, and I was in contact with a spotting aircraft. 2 aircraft, 2 Spitfires they were, would circle the target. One would do the spotting, and the other would cover the spotter's tail. Now they went in pairs, and we went on doing that until we had destroyed the first target, which was a gun emplacement. And at that lull, I had a clue where we were in France. I came up on the bridge, and I picked up a pair of binoculars that the lookout had. I looked on the beach, and this is the classic moment. I said, "That is Arromarsh." And the captain, who was standing on the bridge, those days we had open bridges, you know, he was standing on the bridge, W.S. Wiley, his name. He turned around and he said, "How did you know that?" I said, "We had a family holiday there in 1938. And I can remember, that's the Hotel Normandy." There was silence. I felt pretty good after that, but they didn't think much about that. Boastful fellow. But anyhow, that was my moment. It was drummed in our ears. Ours was not the reason why. Do as you're bloody well told. Get on with it. Whatever task was thrown at you, do it. So we did it. And so it went on. The second time across, we were hit by a bomb. Terrible story. It was an evening, and we had warning that there were a German aircraft going to attack us. So we made smoke. We made smoke from the funnels, and we also had smoke pots around the ship, which were lit, which smoke came out, and we were wreathed in smoke. Unfortunately, nobody had told us to take the tops off these pots, so they glowed red. The German aircraft could very well see what he was targeted with. He came and he landed it was an early guided missile. They had a wire down on the bomb, and it hit the where our aircraft would have been. We had normally carried an aircraft, but not now. And it bounced over the side, on the starboard side, and it blew out the fuel tank that supplied the bakery. So the bakery was down. The ship was damaged. While repairs were effected, controls were leaked. But we were a bit stuffed at that point. But we carried on with bombardment.